The weight of the tray bit into my forearms as I wove between tables, the clatter of silverware and murmur of conversations blending into white noise. My feet ached in shoes 2 sizes too small, the only pair without holes, and the fluorescent lights of Romano's Italian restaurant buzzed overhead like trapped wasps. I'd been on my feet for 11 hours, and the night shift had barely begun. "Table 7 needs water," Marco barked from behind the bar, not bothering to look up. I nodded, swallowing the exhaustion that sat thick in my throat. This job was supposed to be temporary. Just until I finished my nursing degree. That was 3 years ago. Now, at 26, I was still balancing plates and forcing smiles for men who looked through me like I was part of the furniture. The restaurant occupied the ground floor of a hotel in the financial district, where power brokers and their mistresses came to be seen. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across white tablecloths, and the air smelled of expensive wine and roasted garlic. I didn't belong here. Not really. But the tips were better than anywhere else in the city, and I needed every dollar. I grabbed the water pitcher, my reflection catching in its silver surface, dark circles under green eyes, blonde hair scraped back into a bun, lipstick worn away hours ago. Invisible. That's what I'd become. Just another struggling girl in a city full of them. Table 7 sat in the corner, partially obscured by a marble column. I approached with my practiced smile, the one that didn't quite reach my eyes, and nearly dropped the pitcher. 3 men occupied the table, but only one commanded attention. He sat with his back to the wall, always the wall, I'd later learn, in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my annual rent. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. Sharp jawline, olive skin, and eyes so dark they appeared black in the dim light. But it wasn't his looks that made my breath catch. It was the absolute stillness he projected, like a predator deciding whether you were worth the chase. A man stood behind him, hands clasped in front, scanning the room with mechanical precision. Security, the kind you didn't hire from an agency. "Water?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. Those dark eyes lifted to mine, and for a moment, the restaurant ceased to exist. His gaze moved over my face with an intensity that made my skin prickle, cataloging details, seeing me in a way no one had in years. Not invisible. Not anymore. Please. His voice was smooth, accented. Italian, but refined. The kind of voice that made promises and threats sound equally seductive. I leaned forward to pour, hyper-aware of his proximity, of the expensive cologne that smelled like cedar and something darker, more dangerous. My hand trembled. Exhaustion, I told myself. Just exhaustion. And water splashed over the rim of his glass, spreading across the pristine white tablecloth in an accusing stain. "I'm so sorry." The words tumbled out as I grabbed a napkin, dabbing uselessly at the spill. "I'll get you a new tablecloth. His hand caught my wrist. The touch was gentle, but there was steel beneath the silk. His fingers were warm, slightly rough, and they wrapped around my wrist completely. I froze. Napkin clutched in my other hand, pulse hammering against his thumb. "It's just water," he said softly, but his eyes held mine with an intensity that made my knees weak. "No harm done. I'm really sorry. I stopped myself. He didn't care that I'd been working doubles all week, that my electricity bill was overdue, that I'd skipped lunch to save money. Rich men never cared about the struggles of waitresses. But he didn't release my wrist. Instead, his thumb traced a slow circle over my pulse point, and something flickered in those obsidian eyes. Recognition? Interest? I couldn't tell. "What's your name?" The question was simple, but the way he asked made it feel like a demand. "Emma." My voice barely rose above a whisper. "Emma." He repeated it like he was tasting it, memorizing the syllables. "Beautiful name." The man to his right cleared his throat, and whatever spell had been cast broke. He released my wrist slowly, deliberately, his fingers trailing across my skin in a way that felt like a promise. "Bring me your best red wine," he said, leaning back in his chair. "And whatever the chef recommends." I nodded, stepping back on unsteady legs, and nearly collided with another server. By the time I'd steadied myself and looked back, he was deep in conversation with his companions, speaking rapid Italian in voices too low to hear. But even as he talked, even as his attention seemed focused elsewhere, I felt his awareness tracking me across the room. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. I brought their wine, a bottle that cost more than my monthly rent, and appetizers that they barely touched. Every time I approached the table, those dark eyes found mine, holding contact just a fraction too long to be casual. He asked questions. Where was I from? How long had I worked here? Did I enjoy it? Innocent questions, delivered in that velvet voice. But they felt like an interrogation, like he was assembling a puzzle I didn't know I was part of. You should be careful with him, Marco whispered when I returned to the bar for their check. That's not a man you want noticing you. Who is he? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. Marco's face paled. You really don't recognize him. That's Dante Caruso. The name meant nothing to me, and my blank expression must have shown it. Jesus, Emma, he owns half the city, construction, real estate, imports. Marco leaned closer, his voice dropping to barely audible. And other things. Things people don't talk about if they want to keep breathing. Ice spread through my veins. You mean he's dangerous. And if he's interested in you, you run. You run, and you don't look back. But running wasn't an option. I needed this job, and men like Dante Caruso didn't chase waitresses. He was probably just bored, amusing himself with someone so far beneath his world that I might as well have been a different species. Tomorrow, he'd forget I existed. I approached with the check, hands steadier now that I'd decided he was just a momentary distraction. He took it without looking, pulled out a black credit card that had no limit, and handed both back to me. Keep the change, he said casually. I glanced at the bill. $300 for dinner. The tip line was blank, but written at the bottom in sharp, decisive handwriting were 4 words that made my heart stop. Be careful teasing me. Beneath it, 5 crisp $100 bills. I looked up, words of protest forming, but he was already standing. Up close, he was taller than I'd thought, and his presence seemed to fill the space between us like smoke. The security guard moved instantly to his side, and I realized there was a second man by the door I hadn't noticed before. I don't understand, I stammered. I didn't mean to. He stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact, close enough that his cologne wrapped around me like a claim. That trembling hand, he murmured, his voice pitched for my ears alone. Those nervous glances, the way you bite your lip when you're trying not to look at me. His hand rose, and I thought he might touch my face, but he simply tucked a strand of escaped hair behind my ear. Very dangerous, Piccola. When you look at a man like that, you should understand what you're inviting. I wasn't inviting anything, I breathed, but my body betrayed me, leaning infinitesimally toward his heat. His smile was slow, predatory, and absolutely devastating. No? Then why is your pulse racing? Why are your pupils dilated? He leaned in, his lips nearly brushing my ear. Why are you still standing here instead of walking away? Because I couldn't move. Because every instinct screamed danger, but my body was frozen in the orbit of his gravity. The words died as his phone buzzed. He pulled back, checking it with a frown, and the spell shattered. I have to go. He adjusted his cufflinks, the gesture transforming him from predator to businessman in an instant. But I'll be back tomorrow. Same table. 8 o'clock. His eyes locked on mine. You'll be here. It wasn't a question. He turned and walked toward the door, his security falling into formation around him. I stood frozen, the $500 clutched in my hand, my entire body trembling with something that wasn't quite fear. At the door, he paused and looked back over his shoulder. Even across the crowded restaurant, I felt the weight of that gaze. Sweet dreams, Emma, he called out, loud enough that every head in the restaurant turned. Try not to think of me too much. Then he was gone, and I was left standing in the sudden silence. 50 pairs of eyes on me, Marco's horrified face behind the bar, and the terrible certain knowledge that my life had just irrevocably changed. The money in my hand felt like a shackle. And the worst part? Some dark, reckless part of me wanted to see what would happen when I returned tomorrow. I didn't sleep that night. The $500 sat on my kitchen counter, the bills arranged in a neat stack that seemed to glow accusingly in the darkness of my studio apartment. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face. The sharp angles, the predatory smile, the way those dark eyes had stripped away every defense I'd carefully constructed over years of invisibility. Be careful teasing me. I hadn't been teasing, had I? At 3 a.m, I gave up on sleep and made coffee with hands that still trembled. My apartment was a study in survival. A mattress on the floor, a hot plate that worked half the time, secondhand furniture that had seen better decades. The $500 represented 2 weeks of rent, groceries for a month, maybe even enough to fix the leak in the bathroom that left puddles I had to mop up twice daily. I should keep it. I'd earned it, hadn't I? Serving him dinner, enduring his scrutiny, his touch. His touch. I pressed my fingers to my wrist where he'd held me, and I swore I could still feel the heat of his skin, the possessive circle his thumb had traced over my pulse. Marco's warning echoed in my mind. Dangerous. Run, don't look back. But I'd never been good at running, and I needed this job. By the time my alarm went off at noon, I'd convinced myself that last night was an anomaly. Men like Dante Caruso didn't follow through on casual comments to waitresses. He'd forget about me, about the trembling girl who'd spilled water on his table, and life would return to its familiar rhythm of exhaustion and anonymity. I dressed in jeans and an oversized sweater, pulling my hair into a ponytail, and headed to the small cafe 3 blocks away where I sometimes treated myself to breakfast. The morning was cold, autumn leaves skittering across the sidewalk, and the city moved around me with its usual indifference. The cafe was warm and smelled like cinnamon and espresso. I ordered black coffee and a muffin, the cheapest items on the menu, and settled into a corner booth with a textbook I'd been pretending to study for months. My nursing degree, abandoned but not forgotten, a ghost of who I'd planned to become. Emma? I looked up, and my heart stopped. A man stood beside my table, tall and built like he spent his life in a gym. He wore a black suit despite the casual setting, and his expression was professionally blank, one of Dante's security guards. I recognized him from last night. Mr. Caruso would like to speak with you. It wasn't a request. My coffee cup clattered against the saucer. What? How did you? His car is outside. He asks that you join him for a moment. Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, to tell this man that I had plans, that I couldn't just be summoned like a possession, but the words stuck in my throat as I looked past him to the cafe window. A black SUV idled at the curb, windows tinted so dark they looked like holes cut into reality. Even from here, I could feel eyes watching. I'm not dressed for, I wasn't expecting. I gestured helplessly at my casual clothes. The guard's expression didn't change. Mr. Caruso is aware. He won't take much of your time. The other patrons were starting to stare. The barista had stopped mid-pour, foam overflowing, forgotten. I had 2 choices, cause a scene or comply, and something told me that refusing Dante Caruso wasn't just rude, it was dangerous. Fine, I whispered, gathering my things with trembling hands. Just a moment. The guard nodded and led me outside. The morning air hit my face like a slap, clearing some of the fear fog from my mind. He opened the SUV's rear door, and I hesitated on the curb, staring into the darkness beyond. Emma. That voice, smooth as aged whiskey, rolling my name like a caress. Don't keep me waiting. I climbed in. The interior was all black leather and tinted windows, the outside world reduced to shadows. Dante sat in the far seat, dressed more casually than last night in dark jeans and a black sweater that somehow made him look more dangerous. Not less. The door closed behind me with a final sounding click, and suddenly we were alone in this dim, confined space that smelled like his cologne, and something else. Gunpowder, maybe, or just the metallic tang of power. You found me. My voice came out steadier than I felt. How? His smile was slow, knowing. Emma Mitchell, 26, lives at 847 Riverside in apartment 3C. Works doubles at Romano's 6 days a week, studying for a nursing degree she hasn't actively pursued in 14 months. No family, few friends. Bank account currently overdrawn by $47. He tilted his head. Should I continue? Ice flooded my veins. You investigated me? I protect my interests. He leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees, and the space between us compressed into nothing. And you've become very interesting, Piccola. I'm just a waitress. I spilled water on your table. There's nothing interesting about... You're lying. He said it softly, but the words had edges. Your hands shake from exhaustion, not nervousness. You chose the cheapest items on that cafe menu despite having $500 in your apartment. And when I touched you last night, you didn't pull away. You leaned in. His eyes locked on mine. Why? Don't. The single word cracked like a whip. Don't insult me with lies, Emma. I've built an empire on reading people, on knowing when they're hiding something. He reached out, and I flinched, but he only traced a finger down my cheek with devastating gentleness. You felt it too. That pull, that recognition. I wanted to deny it, but my body betrayed me again, skin heating under his touch, breath catching audibly in the quiet car. What do you want from me? The question came out as barely a whisper. His hand moved to cup my jaw, thumb brushing my lower lip. I want you to have dinner with me tonight. Somewhere private. Just the two of us. I have to work. I've already spoken to Marco. You have the night off. Paid. Of course he had. Men like him didn't ask permission. They rearranged the world to suit their desires. And if I say no? Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or respect. Then I'll be disappointed. But I won't force you, Emma. Whatever else I am, I'm not that kind of man. He leaned back, giving me space that somehow felt like a loss. I'm simply asking you to take a chance. One dinner. One conversation. Then you can decide if you want to run. Why me? The question burst out before I could stop it. You could have anyone. Models, actresses, women who understand your world. Why chase a broke waitress with no prospects? His smile turned dangerous, because those women know what I am. They see the power, the money, the danger, and they either want to use it or they're terrified of it. His hand rose again, tucking hair behind my ear in a gesture that was becoming familiar. But you, Piccola, you looked at me like I was just a man, a hot traveler maybe, someone passing through. His voice dropped to something darker, more possessive. Do you know how rare that is? How intoxicating? I didn't know who you were, I protested weakly. Exactly. He pulled out his phone, typed something, and my phone buzzed in my pocket. That's the address. 7 o'clock. A car will pick you up at 6:30. His eyes held mine. Wear something comfortable. This isn't a performance, Emma. I want to know you. And if I don't come, then I'll know I was wrong about you. He reached across me to open the door, his arm brushing my body, his heat enveloping me for one dizzying moment. But I'm rarely wrong. The door swung open, revealing the familiar street, the normal world I understood. I should have climbed out immediately, should have run back to my safe, predictable life. Instead, I turned back to him. You said you protect your interests. What happens when I stop being interesting? His smile could have melted stone. Let's hope you never find out. I stumbled out of the car on weak legs, and the door closed before I could respond. The SUV pulled away smoothly, leaving me standing on the sidewalk with my heart racing and my phone burning in my pocket. Back in my apartment, I opened the message. Just an address in the hills, the wealthy area where old money and new crime overlapped. No other instructions, no warnings, just that single line of text that felt like both an invitation and a trap. I had 6 hours to decide, 6 hours to choose between safety and something that terrified me more than poverty. More than invisibility, more than the endless cycle of survival I'd been trapped in for years. I spent those hours pacing my tiny apartment, arguing with myself, listing all the reasons this was insane. He was dangerous. Marco had practically begged me to stay away. He was involved in things that could destroy me. He'd investigated me, invaded my privacy, manipulated my schedule without asking. But he'd also seen me, really seen me, in a way no one had in years. At 5:30, I stood in front of my closet, if you could call a tension rod with 15 items of clothing a closet, and made my choice. I didn't have anything fancy, nothing that would suit a private dinner with a man who wore suits that cost more than my car. But I had a simple black dress I'd bought for job interviews, Slightly too big now because I'd lost weight I couldn't afford to lose. I had one pair of heels that didn't have scuffs. I had mascara and lipstick from 2 years ago. I made myself as presentable as poverty allowed, and at 6:25 I locked my apartment and walked downstairs on trembling legs. The black SUV was already waiting. The guard from this morning opened the door, his face still professionally blank, and I climbed in before I could change my mind. The interior was empty, just me and the leather seats and the sound of my racing heart. We drove for 20 minutes, winding up into the hills where houses became estates, and the city lights spread below like fallen stars. The SUV turned through iron gates that opened automatically, down a long driveway lined with security cameras, and stopped in front of a house that looked more like a fortress. Modern architecture, all glass and steel and sharp angles. Lights glowed warm from within, and I could see artwork on the walls, expensive furniture, the kind of wealth that didn't need to announce itself. The door opened, and I stepped out into the cool evening. Another guard stood by the entrance, speaking quietly into a radio. He nodded to me, and the front door swung open as if by magic. Dante stood in the doorway, backlit by golden light, and my breath caught for the third time in 24 hours. He'd changed into dark slacks and a white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and scattered with faint scars. His hair was slightly damp, like he'd showered recently, and without the armor of his suit, he looked almost human. Almost. "You came," he said softly, and something in his voice made it sound like a victory. "I'm an idiot," I replied, then clapped a hand over my mouth, horrified. His laugh was genuine, transforming his face into something devastating. "No, Piccola, you're brave." He stepped aside, gesturing me in. "And I promise, whatever else happens tonight, you'll be safe." "You have my word." I stepped over the threshold, into his world, and heard the door close behind me like the ceiling of a cage, or perhaps the opening of one I'd been trapped in all along. His home was a contradiction, cold architecture wrapped around unexpected warmth. The entryway opened into a massive living space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, but the furniture was comfortable, lived in. Books lined the shelves, actual paper books with worn spines. A half-empty glass of whiskey sat on the coffee table beside a laptop, showing what looked like architectural blueprints. I expected something more intimidating, I said before I could stop myself. Dante closed the door, and suddenly we were alone. Truly alone, without guards or witnesses, and the air between us felt charged with possibility and danger in equal measure. "What did you expect?" He moved past me, his hand brushing the small of my back in a touch that felt both casual and possessive. Marble statues, animal heads on walls, a throne made of my enemy's bones. Despite everything, I laughed. Maybe not the throne, but I don't know. Something colder. I saved the cold for business. He guided me toward the living area, his hand still on my back, burning through the thin fabric of my dress. This is where I remember I'm human. A dining table had been set by the windows, intimate with just 2 chairs, candles flickering despite the modern surroundings. The smell of cooking wafted from somewhere. Garlic, herbs, wine. My stomach growled embarrassingly loud. "When did you last eat?" His voice sharpened with something like concern. "This morning. The cafe." I didn't mention that the muffin had been my only meal. His jaw tightened. "Sit." It was a command, not a request, and I should have bristled at his tone. Instead, I found myself moving to the table, settling into the chair he pulled out. He disappeared through a doorway, and I took the moment to breathe, to remind myself that I could still leave. That this was just dinner, that I was in control. The lie didn't convince even me. He returned carrying 2 plates, and I blinked in surprise. "You cooked?" "You sound shocked." He set a plate before me, pasta in a cream sauce with vegetables, simple but elegant, the portions generous. "I grew up in my grandmother's kitchen in Sicily. She'd haunt me if I couldn't feed a woman properly." The mention of his grandmother made him seem more human, less like the dangerous figure Marco had warned me about. I picked up my fork, hyper-aware of his eyes watching my every movement. The first bite exploded with flavor. Garlic, cream, fresh basil, pasta cooked perfectly al dente. I couldn't stop the small moan of pleasure that escaped. Good? His voice had dropped an octave. Amazing. I took another bite. Suddenly ravenous, too hungry to maintain pretense. Where did you learn to cook like this? My grandmother, like I said, then various grandmothers and aunts throughout Sicily. He poured wine. Red, expensive, the bottle unlabeled. Food is sacred in my family. It's how we show love, seal deals, make peace. His eyes held mine over the candlelight. Or seduce beautiful women. I nearly choked on my pasta. Is that what this is? Seduction? Would you prefer I lie? He leaned back, wine glass dangling from long fingers, completely at ease while I felt like I was vibrating out of my skin. I want you, Emma. I've wanted you since the moment you approached my table with exhaustion in your eyes and determination in your spine. But I'm not interested in a single night. Then what are you interested in? Keeping you. He said it simply, like he was commenting on the weather, not upending my entire world. I want to know everything about you. Why you abandoned nursing school. Why you work yourself to death for pennies. What makes you smile. What keeps you awake at night. What you dream about when you finally let yourself rest. That's insane. You don't even know me. Then let me. He set down his glass and leaned forward, intensity radiating from him like heat. I know you're proud. You haven't touched the money I gave you except to pay bills. I know you're intelligent. Your test scores from nursing school are exceptional. I know you're alone, but not by choice. Something happened, didn't it? Something that made you give up on your dreams and settle for survival. My throat tightened. You have no right to dig into my life. No, he agreed, but I did it anyway. And I'll keep doing it. Keep pushing, keep demanding, until you either tell me to leave you alone or let me in. His hand reached across the table, palm up, an offering. I'm not a good man, Emma. I've done things that would make you run screaming. But I protect what's mine with everything I have. And I want you to be mine. I'm not a possession. No. You're a woman who deserves to be cherished, protected, given everything she's been denying herself. His eyes blazed. Let me do that. Let me take care of you. I don't need taking care of, but my voice wavered, betraying how much I wanted exactly that. Everyone needs someone, Piccola. His hand remained extended, waiting. Even stubborn waitresses with trust issues. I stared at his hand, strong, scarred, capable of violence and tenderness in equal measure. Every logical part of my brain screamed at me to leave, to walk out of this beautiful cage before the door locked behind me, but I was so tired. Tired of struggling, of being invisible, of pretending I didn't want more than the tiny, cramped life I'd built from necessity. Slowly, I placed my hand in his fingers closed around mine immediately, possessively, and the triumph in his eyes should have scared me. Instead, heat pooled low in my stomach, and I understood with sudden clarity that I was already caught. Tell me, he said softly, thumb tracing circles on my palm. Tell me what broke you. The words came before I could stop them, pulled out by his touch, his attention, the wine and the candlelight, and the desperate need to be seen by someone who looked at me like I mattered. His name was David. My voice sounded hollow. We met in nursing school. He was charming, ambitious, everything I thought I wanted. I stared at our joined hands. I worked 2 jobs to support us while he finished his degree. He said once he graduated, once he had a good job, he'd take care of me, help me finish school, marry me. But he didn't. Dante's voice held an edge of violence. He graduated top of his class, got hired at a prestigious hospital. And then, I swallowed hard. He left. Took the money I'd saved for tuition, maxed out credit cards in my name, and moved across the country with someone else. Someone from a better family, with connections he could use. And you never finished school. I was drowning in debt, had to drop out, work full-time just to survive. By the time I paid everything off, too much time had passed. I'd missed too much. I couldn't catch up. The old shame burned in my chest. So I became a waitress, and I stayed a waitress. Dante's hand tightened on mine, and when I looked up, his eyes were black fire. Where is he now? I don't know. I don't care. A lie, but a small one. I'll find him. His voice was silk over steel. and I'll make sure he understands what it means to steal from what's mine. I wasn't yours then. You are now." He stood, pulling me up with him. And suddenly we were close, his hands framing my face with a gentleness that contradicted the fury in his eyes. "Anyone who hurt you, anyone who made you believe you were less than extraordinary, will answer to me. You can't just—" "I can." He tilted my face up, his thumb brushing my lower lip. "I can do anything I want, Emma. I own this city. I control more money and power than you can imagine, and I'm choosing to use it on you." His forehead touched mine. "Let me erase him. Let me show you what it means to be wanted by a man who doesn't take what's his lightly. This is crazy." But I didn't pull away, couldn't pull away, trapped in the gravity of his presence. "Yes." His breath ghosted across my lips. "But you're still here, still letting me touch you, still looking at me like you want to know what my mouth tastes like. I don't—" The lie died as his lips brushed mine, feather-light, a question rather than a demand. Every nerve ending ignited. I made a sound, half gasp, half moan, and he swallowed it, his kiss deepening, claiming, showing me exactly what he'd meant by possession. His hand slid into my hair, tilting my head for better access, and I grabbed his shoulders for balance as my knees went weak. He kissed like he did everything else, with complete confidence and devastating skill. His tongue traced my lower lip, requesting entry, and I opened for him without thought, without defense, drowning in sensations I'd forgotten existed. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard, and his eyes had gone molten. "Stay," he whispered against my lips. "Stay with me tonight. Not for sex, just stay. Let me hold you. Let me prove I can give you something other than fear." I should go home. But the words had no conviction. Why? To that empty apartment? That lonely bed? The life that's eating you alive piece by piece? His hand slid down to my waist, holding me against him. "Stay, Emma. Just tonight. Tomorrow you can decide if this is what you want. But give me tonight to show you what could be." It was the could be that broke me. The possibility of something more, something beyond the endless cycle of exhaustion and invisibility. The chance to be seen, wanted, protected, even if just for one night. "Just tonight," I whispered. His smile was pure triumph. Just tonight. He led me upstairs, and my heart hammered with anticipation and fear. But he didn't take me to his bedroom. Instead, he opened a door to a guest room decorated in soft grays and whites, a bed that looked like a cloud, windows overlooking the city lights. "Sleep here," he said, reading my tension. "I won't come in unless you ask. There's a bathroom through that door. New toiletries in the cabinet. My room is at the end of the hall if you need anything." He brushed a kiss across my forehead. "Dream well, Piccola." Then he was gone, and I was alone in luxury I'd never experienced, staring at a bed that probably cost more than everything I owned combined. I should have left, should have called a cab, returned to reality, protected myself from the inevitable heartbreak of wanting something I could never truly have. Instead, I showered in a bathroom lined with marble, borrowed a t-shirt from the cabinet that smelled like his cologne, and climbed into sheets with a thread count I couldn't even estimate. And for the first time in 3 years, I slept through the night without nightmares, cocooned in safety I didn't deserve but desperately wanted to keep. When I woke, sunlight streamed through the windows and the smell of coffee drifted from downstairs. I pulled on my dress from last night and padded barefoot through the quiet house, following the scent like a lifeline. Dante stood in the kitchen, still in sleep-rumpled clothes, hair falling across his forehead, making espresso with the focus of a man performing surgery. He looked up as I entered, and his smile was softer than I'd seen, almost tender. "Good morning, beautiful." He poured a second cup. "How do you take it?" "Black." I accepted the cup, our fingers brushing, electricity sparking between us. "You let me sleep." "You needed it?" His eyes traced my face. "You look better, less haunted." I searched for the word. "Safe." "Good." He moved closer, crowding me against the counter in a way that should have felt threatening, but instead felt protective. Because you are. As long as you're with me, nothing will hurt you. I'll make sure of it. His phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He frowned, checking it, and his expression transformed into something cold and dangerous. What's wrong? Business. He typed a rapid response, jaw tight. I have to go out for a few hours. My driver will take you wherever you need. Dante. He kissed me, hard and possessive, a brand rather than a goodbye. This isn't over, Emma. Last night wasn't enough. I want more. I want everything. His hand cupped my face. Tell me you feel it too. I feel it. The admission felt like surrender. Then trust me. Trust that I know what's best for you, even when you're scared. Another kiss, softer this time. I'll see you tonight. Same time. But Emma? His eyes locked on mine. Next time I won't let you leave. The driver took me home through morning traffic, and reality crashed back with brutal efficiency. My apartment looked even smaller, dingier, more depressing after spending a night surrounded by luxury. The contrast was deliberate, I realized. Dante had shown me what life could be, then sent me back to what it was, forcing me to acknowledge the difference, forcing me to want more. I had 3 hours before my shift at Romano's. 3 hours to convince myself that last night was a mistake, that getting involved with a man like Dante Caruso would only end in destruction. But his taste still lingered on my lips, his words echoing in my mind. I want everything. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Wear the red dress tonight. I'm taking you somewhere special. D. I stared at the message, then at my closet. I didn't own a red dress. I barely owned any dress besides the black one currently crumpled on my bathroom floor. Another buzz. Check your door. Heart pounding, I crossed to the entrance and opened it. A large white box sat on the mat, tied with black ribbon. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was the most beautiful dress I'd ever seen. Deep crimson silk, simple but elegant, with a price tag that made my vision blur. A note in that same sharp handwriting, no arguments. You're mine to dress now. D. I should have been offended. Should have sent it back with a scathing message about independence and self-respect. Instead, I held the silk against my body and imagined his reaction when he saw me wearing it. I was so far gone it was terrifying. Work was torture. Every table I served, every smile I forced, every second felt like wading through concrete. Marco watched me with concern and something like pity, but he didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The entire staff knew Dante Caruso had noticed me, and they were already mourning what I'd been before I became whatever I was transforming into. At 6, I changed in the restaurant bathroom, applying makeup with trembling hands. The red dress fit perfectly. Of course it did. He'd probably had someone take my measurements while I slept, hugging curves I'd forgotten I had, making my skin glow, transforming me into someone who belonged in Dante's world. Someone who wasn't me. But when I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked confident, beautiful, desired. She looked like someone who deserved more than survival. The black SUV was waiting outside. This time, when the guard opened the door, Dante was inside. He'd been looking at his phone, but his head snapped up as I climbed in, and the expression that crossed his face made my breath catch. Raw hunger, barely restrained, mixed with something softer, pride maybe, or possession. Cristo, he breathed. You're devastating. It's just a dress, but my voice shook. It's not the dress. He reached out, pulling me across the seat until I was pressed against him, his hand spanning my waist. It's you. The way you hold yourself now, like you're starting to believe you're worth something. His lips brushed my temple. You are, Emma. You're worth everything. Where are we going? Somewhere I can show you off. His hand slid up my spine, leaving fire in its wake. And somewhere I can make sure every man in this city knows you're taken. The restaurant was on the top floor of the most exclusive hotel downtown. The kind of place that didn't advertise because if you didn't know about it, you couldn't afford it. Security checked Dante's name. Just his name. No ID required. and we were escorted to a private table on the balcony overlooking the city. Other diners turned to stare, women in designer gowns and men in custom suits, the kind of wealth and power that usually made me invisible. But with Dante's hand on the small of my back, his body angled protectively toward mine, I wasn't invisible anymore. I was terrifyingly, dangerously visible. "You're tense." He pulled out my chair, his hands lingering on my shoulders. "Relax, Piccola. They're just people." "They're your people," I whispered. "I don't belong here. You belong wherever I say you belong." He settled across from me, and even sitting, he commanded the space. "And I say you belong at my side." Dinner was a blur of courses I couldn't name, wine that tasted like bottled sunlight, and Dante's eyes never leaving my face. He asked questions about my childhood, my dreams before David destroyed them, what I'd do if money wasn't an issue, and he listened. Truly listened, like every word mattered. Halfway through the meal, a man approached our table, tall, silver-haired, expensive suit, and an expression that tried for friendly but missed by miles. "Caruso." He nodded respectfully, but his eyes slid to me with undisguised interest. "Didn't expect to see you here with company." Dante's hand moved to cover mine on the table, his grip possessive. "Mitchell. This is Emma. Emma. This is Richard Mitchell, city councilman." Mitchell. My last name. Coincidence, or was Dante sending a message? "Pleasure." Mitchell extended his hand, and I shook it briefly before Dante's grip tightened, pulling me back. "You're new to Dante's circle. I would have remembered someone so striking." "Emma isn't part of any circle." Dante's voice could have cut glass. "She's mine. Exclusively. I trust that's clear?" Something dangerous flashed in Mitchell's eyes before he smiled. "Crystal, enjoy your evening." He walked away, but I felt his attention lingering like oil on my skin. What was that about? I pulled my hand free, suddenly cold despite the warm evening. Territorial pissing. Dante's jaw was tight. Mitchell likes to test boundaries. See what he can take. I was reminding him that you're not available for testing. I'm not a possession to be claimed. No. He leaned forward, his intensity pinning me to my chair. "You're the woman I'm falling for, which makes you infinitely more valuable and dangerous. And in my world, that means protecting you from men who would use you to get to me. Falling for?" My heart stuttered. "Dante, it's been 2 days. Do you think time matters?" His hand cupped my face across the table. "I've spent years surrounded by people who want something from me. Money, power, protection, connection. But you, Emma, you don't even know what to want. You're so busy surviving you've forgotten how to live." His thumb traced my cheekbone. "I want to teach you. I want to give you everything you've been denying yourself and watch you bloom." That's not falling. That's control. It's both. He didn't flinch from the accusation. "I won't lie to you about who I am. I'm possessive, controlling, dangerous when threatened, but I'm also capable of devotion that would terrify you if you understood its depth." His eyes held mine. "I want you, Emma. Not for a night, not for a month. I want you permanently, irrevocably mine." "That's insane." "Yes." His smile was sharp as a blade. "But you're still here, still letting me touch you, still wearing the dress I bought you, and sitting at my table and looking at me like you want to believe every word." He stood, extending his hand. "Dance with me." "There's no music." "There will be." He led me to a small dance floor, where a live band had begun playing something slow and sultry. His arm slid around my waist, pulling me flush against him, and suddenly we were moving, his body leading mine with effortless grace. "You didn't tell me you could dance," I murmured against his chest. "You didn't ask." His hand splayed across my lower back, holding me possessively close. "There's a lot you don't know about me yet, Piccola. But you will. I'll show you every part of me, light and shadow, until you understand exactly what you're accepting. And if I can't accept it," his hand tightened, almost painful, "then I'll spend every day convincing you otherwise. I don't give up what's mine, Emma, ever." We danced until the song ended, and then another began, and another. The restaurant faded away until it was just us. His heat surrounding me, his scent in my lungs, his voice murmuring words in Italian I didn't understand but felt in my bones. When we finally left, I was dizzy with wine and proximity, and the slow, inevitable realization that I was falling just as hard as he claimed to be. The drive to his house felt different tonight, charged with inevitability. When we pulled through the gates, my heart was hammering so hard I thought it might escape my chest. "Stay," he said as the car stopped. "Not a question this time. Stay with me, Emma. Really stay." "Dante, I know you're scared. I know this is fast and probably reckless and everything your logical mind is screaming against." He turned to face me, and the vulnerability in his eyes was more devastating than any command. "But I also know that life has beaten you down until you forgot you deserve to be cherished. Let me remind you. Let me show you what it's like to be someone's entire world. For how long?" The question came out broken. "Until you get bored? Until someone better comes along?" "There is no one better." He pulled me into his lap, and I went without resistance, craving his touch like a drug. "You're it for me, Emma. The one I didn't know I was looking for until I saw you trembling behind that water pitcher, trying so hard to be invisible while shining like a fucking star." He kissed me then, deep and claiming, and I kissed him back with 3 years of loneliness and longing, pouring everything I couldn't say into the press of lips and tangle of tongues. His hands roamed my body with barely restrained hunger, and I arched into his touch, desperate for more, for everything, for the erasure of the woman I'd been, and the birth of whoever I was becoming in his arms. "Stay," he whispered against my mouth. "Stay and be mine, and I swear on everything I am, I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it." I should have said no, should have protected myself from the inevitable heartbreak, but as I looked into his eyes, dark with desire and something deeper, something that looked terrifyingly like love, I knew it was already too late. "Yes," I breathed. "Yes, I'll stay." His smile was pure triumph and relief mixed together. "Thank God." He kissed me again, softer this time, reverent. "Come inside, Piccola. Let me show you what it means to be mine." He carried me into the house, actually carried me like I weighed nothing. And I should have protested, but instead I buried my face in his neck, breathing him in, accepting that I'd just made the most dangerous decision of my life. And I didn't care. We made it to his bedroom, huge, masculine, dominated by a bed that looked custom-made, before he set me down carefully, his hands framing my face. "Last chance to run," he murmured. "After tonight, there's no going back. You'll be mine in every way that matters, and I'll destroy anyone who tries to take you from me. Promise?" The word escaped before I could stop it. His laugh was dark and delighted. "Oh, Piccola, you have no idea what you've just unleashed." He kissed me until I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't remember why this was supposed to be wrong. And when he finally pulled back, we were both trembling, both desperate, both surrendering to something neither of us could control. "I need to tell you something," he said, his forehead resting against mine, "something important before this goes further." Dread pooled in my stomach. "What?" "The man who destroyed you, David. I found him." His eyes held mine, unflinching. "He's been working at Harbor Medical for 2 years, married to his supervisor's daughter. Living the life he stole from you." Ice flooded my veins. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm going to destroy him." His voice was silk over steel. "I'm going to take everything he has, everything he built on your sacrifice, and I'm going to grind it to dust. But I need to know. Do you want to watch? Or would you prefer he simply disappears from your life completely?" "Dante, you can't." "I can. I will." His hands tightened on my face. "He hurt what's mine. That doesn't go unpunished." I should have been horrified. Should have begged him to leave David alone, to be the bigger person. Instead, a dark part of me, the part that had been invisible for too long, that had suffered in silence, whispered, "Let him." "I don't want to watch," I said quietly. "But I don't want to stop you either." His smile was absolutely feral. "That's my girl." That night, Dante made love to me with a reverence that shattered every defense I had left. He worshipped my body like it was something precious, murmuring Italian endearments against my skin, showing me with hands and mouth, and devastating patience that I was wanted, cherished, seen. And when I finally shattered in his arms, crying his name into the darkness, he held me like I was the most valuable thing in his world. Mine. He whispered against my hair as I drifted toward sleep. Forever mine, Emma. I'll never let you go. I should have been terrified by the possessiveness in his voice. Instead, I burrowed deeper into his warmth and let myself believe in forever. Just for tonight. Morning came too soon. I woke wrapped in expensive sheets and Dante's arms, sunlight streaming through windows I'd forgotten to close. His chest rose and fell beneath my cheek, steady and strong, and for a moment, I let myself pretend this was real, sustainable, something more than a beautiful dream that would inevitably shatter. "Stop thinking so loud," he murmured, his voice rough with sleep. "I can feel your anxiety from here." "I have to go to work." "No, you don't." His arms tightened around me. "I told you, I spoke to Marco. You're on leave." I pushed up to look at him and found his eyes already open, watching me with that intensity that made my breath catch. "You can't just rearrange my life without asking." "I can," and I did. His hand slid into my hair, gentle but firm. "You're exhausted, Emma. When's the last time you took a day off? A week? A month?" "I can't afford—" "You can now." He sat up, pulling me with him, and I was suddenly very aware that we were both naked, that his hands on my body felt like brands. "I'm taking care of you now. That means no more working yourself to death for scraps. No more choosing between rent and food. No more pretending you don't deserve better." "Dante, I can't just let you—" "Yes, you can." He kissed me, swallowing my protests. "And you will. Because you're mine now, and I take care of what's mine." His eyes held a warning. "Don't fight me on this, Piccola. You won't win." Pride warred with exhaustion and the desperate, secret relief of having someone else carry the weight for once. "I'm not a charity case. No. You're the woman I'm keeping." His hand cupped my face. "There's a difference. A charity case is temporary. You're permanent." The certainty in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like coming home. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of luxury and possession. Dante kept me at his house, surrounding me with comfort I'd never imagined. He worked from home when possible, his office door always open, his eyes tracking me whenever I moved through the space. When he had to leave for meetings, security appeared, silent men who followed at a distance, but made their presence known. "They're for your protection," he explained when I protested. "The moment you became mine, you became a target." "A target for what?" His expression darkened. "People who want to hurt me, and the best way to hurt me now is through you." He pulled me into his arms, his hold almost painful. "I won't let that happen. You're too important." I should have run. Should have recognized the cage closing around me. But every night he came home and held me like I was air, kissing away my doubts, showing me with his body that I was wanted, needed, essential. And slowly I stopped thinking about leaving and started thinking about staying forever. On the 15th day, everything changed. I was in his kitchen making coffee when my phone rang. My old phone, the one I'd barely looked at since moving in. An unknown number, but something made me answer. "Emma Mitchell?" A woman's voice, professional and cold. "Yes?" "This is Detective Sarah Chen with the SFPD. We need you to come to the station to answer some questions regarding David Brennan." My blood went cold. "What? Why?" "Mr. Brennan was found dead 3 days ago. Apparent suicide. But there are inconsistencies. Your name came up during our investigation." The phone slipped from my hand, clattering against the marble counter. Dead. David was dead. And the police were calling me. Strong hands caught my shoulders, spinning me around. Dante stood there, his face carefully blank, and I knew. I knew with sudden, horrible certainty. "What did you do?" My voice came out as a whisper, what I promised. No apology, no shame. I destroyed him. "You killed him?" Not a question. "No." His eyes held mine steadily. "He killed himself. After losing everything. His job, his wife, his reputation, his money. After realizing that the woman he'd stolen from had someone powerful enough to take it all back." His hands tightened on my shoulders. "I didn't pull the trigger, Emma. I just made him understand what he'd done to you." The police. Won't find anything connecting me to him. Or you. He pulled me against his chest, and I went rigid in his arms. You're safe, Piccola. I made sure of it. You should have asked me. My voice broke. You should have told me before. If I'd asked, you would have said no. And he would have kept living the life he stole from you while you suffered. His hand tilted my face up, forcing me to meet his eyes. I don't regret it. I'd do it again. I'd do worse. Anyone who hurts you answers to me. I should have been horrified, should have run screaming to the police, turned him in, saved whatever remained of my moral compass. But as I looked into his eyes, dark and possessive, and absolutely certain, I felt something shift inside me. David had destroyed my life without remorse, had taken everything and left me with nothing, never looking back, never caring about the damage he'd caused, and now he was gone, erased by the man who'd given me everything back. I should hate you for this, I whispered. But you don't. Not a question. I don't. The admission felt like surrender and freedom combined. God help me, I don't. His smile was triumphant and relieved. Then we understand each other. He kissed me, deep and claiming. You're mine, Emma. All of you, light and shadow. And I'm yours, with all the darkness that entails. The detective called twice more, but I never answered. Dante's lawyers handled it. Statements given, alibis confirmed, the investigation quietly closed. David Brennan became a footnote, a cautionary tale about ambition and betrayal, and his death barely made the news, and I let it happen. Let Dante protect me, cover for me, keep me safe from the consequences of his actions. Because the alternative was losing him, and I'd already lost too much. 3 months later, we stood on the balcony of his penthouse, the city spread below like a kingdom. His arms wrapped around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder, and I felt the weight of the ring he'd just placed on my finger. Marry me, he'd said. Not a question, just like everything else with Dante, but this time, I didn't fight it. Yes, I'd answered, yes, I'll marry you. Now, as the sun set over the city he controlled, I turned in his arms and looked up at the man who'd destroyed my past to give me a future. No regrets? He asked softly, his hands framing my face. I thought about the struggling waitress I'd been, invisible and exhausted, slowly dying in plain sight. I thought about David and the life he'd stolen. I thought about every moment that had led me to spill water on Dante's table and meet his dark, dangerous eyes. No regrets, I said, and meant it. His kiss was possessive and tender, promise and warning combined. Good. Because you're stuck with me now, Piccola. For better or worse, you're mine forever. And you're mine, I whispered against his lips, claiming him back with words I'd never thought I'd say. My protector, my obsession, my darkness, and my light. Always. His arms tightened around me as the sun disappeared, leaving us wrapped in shadows and the glow of city lights. I'll burn this whole world down before I let anyone take you from me. Once, the intensity of his devotion would have terrified me. Now, it felt like safety, like home, like the inevitable conclusion to a story that began with a trembling hand and a spilled glass of water. 6 months after our wedding, I enrolled back in nursing school. Dante had cleared my debt, arranged for the best program, hired tutors to help me catch up. But every evening, I came home to him, to his possessive hands and devastating kisses, to the absolute certainty that I was wanted, protected, cherished. How was class? He asked one night, pulling me into his lap the moment I walked through the door. Exhausting, but good. I buried my face in his neck, breathing in his scent. I forgot how much I loved learning. You're brilliant. His hands roamed my body, familiar and claiming. And mine. Never forget that part. As if you'd let me. But there was no heat in the words, just affection and acceptance of the man he was. Dangerous, possessive, capable of terrible things, but devoted to me with an intensity that made everything else worthwhile. We built a life together in the shadows of his empire. I finished nursing school and started working at a hospital he'd made generous donations to, helping people who reminded me of who I'd been, struggling, invisible, forgotten. And every night, I came home to the man who'd seen me when I was nothing, and made me believe I was everything. Sometimes, I thought about that first night, the warning note he'd left, "Be careful teasing me." I hadn't understood then what I was inviting, what doors I was opening by looking at him like he was just a man, just a hot traveler, passing through my ordinary life. But I understood now, understood that some men, once they decided you were theirs, would move heaven and hell to keep you, would destroy anyone who stood in the way, would wrap you in golden chains so beautiful you'd forget they were chains at all. And the most dangerous part? I didn't want to be free. "What are you thinking about?" Dante murmured against my hair as we lay in bed, his arms wrapped around me in his customary possessive hold. How my life used to be, how different everything is now. Better or worse? I turned in his arms, meeting his dark eyes in the moonlight streaming through the windows. Better. Dangerous, complicated, probably morally questionable. I touched his face, tracing the sharp lines I'd memorized. But infinitely better. His smile was soft and fierce combined. Good, because I'm never letting you go, Emma Caruso. You're mine until my last breath, and probably beyond that. Promise? I whispered, echoing that first night, that first surrender. Promise. He kissed me, sealing the vow. Forever and always, Piccola. You're stuck with your Mafia boss who couldn't resist a beautiful waitress with trembling hands and eyes that saw him as just a man. I was so naive. I laughed softly, thinking you were just a hot traveler. You were perfect. His arms tightened. You still are. My perfect, precious Emma, who taught me that love is more dangerous than any enemy, more powerful than any empire. His forehead touched mine. Thank you for not running. Thank you for staying, even when you understood what I was. Thank you for seeing me, I whispered back, for making me visible when I'd forgotten what that felt like. We lay there in the darkness, wrapped in each other, and the complicated, dangerous love we'd built from a spilled glass of water and a warning I hadn't heeded. And as I drifted toward sleep, safe in the arms of the most dangerous man in the city, I smiled. Because I'd been careful. I'd weighed the risks, understood the consequences, and chosen him anyway. Chosen the darkness and the light, the possession and the devotion, the fear and the safety all tangled together. I'd chosen to be loved by a man who would burn the world for me. And I'd never been happier. Outside, the city glittered like fallen stars, and somewhere in its depths, the empire Dante commanded continued its dark work. But here, in this bed, in this man's arms, I was just Emma. Not invisible, not forgotten, not alone, just loved. Completely, dangerously, irrevocably loved. And that was worth every risk I'd taken to get here.